Testing. Sammy, are we all ready to go? No worries. That's quite fun, actually. Good morning, good evening everybody, and welcome to the Environment Committee of Wednesday the 9th of June 2021. Firstly, can I thank and welcome all members back to the first physical Environment Committee for a very long time, and it is lovely to see other human beings in the flesh, and also welcome to everybody who may be viewing this online either live or in a subsequent YouTube video. To kind of kick off proceedings, Tina just needs to do a bit of an explanation of the running orders and how this meeting will be working in our new world of semi-remote.
Good evening. Thank you to all those attending the Environment Committee this evening and to those who are watching this meeting live via our YouTube channel. To those who are present with us this evening, I would just like to run through some brief housekeeping rules with you. Please could we ask you to use hand sanitizer when entering and exiting the room this evening, and you will find sanitizers located within the room should you require to use this during the meeting. We ask that face coverings are worn when moving about the room and are only removed when you are seated or standing to talk on an item. Please also remember to follow the social distancing guidelines in place. We are operating a one-way system in the room this evening, and you will see signs on the doors to assist you. We are not expecting any test fire drills this evening. If you should hear a fire alarm, please make your way out of the room and down the stairs, where officers will assist you to the evacuation location, which is across the road outside the Star Hotel. Anybody requiring help in the event of an evacuation, please make yourself known and the relevant assistance will be provided. Please could I ask that all mobile phones are either switched off or put onto silent mode. Members, I will remind you that should you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for myself or the chairman to acknowledge you, and your name will be added to those waiting to speak. When called to speak, you will be required to press the button on your microphone in front of you, which will turn red when active. Please can we ask that you speak both loudly and clearly into the microphone so those watching live can hear you. When voting this evening, members, this will be undertaken by a show of hands. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, okay. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, I have apologies from Councillor Talbot this evening.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? I can't see any hands up, so I'm assuming the answer is no. Item 3, we have the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of January. We will be going through them page by page, so if you have any questions or comments, please indicate at the appropriate moment. So page 4, page 5, Councillor Robinson-Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, page 5, item 4, the forward plan, number 2, it states that that I'd reiterated my request from the last meeting to have an update on the selective housing or selective licensing. At that point, Kate Watts was the director, I think, at the time, and she said it was coming to housing, and I had already asked for this once before, and I thought it was agreed again to be on this agenda, which it's not this evening, but even so, it does also say there that she would circulate a copy to this committee after the date that it went to Housing and Neighbourhoods, and nothing has been received, so at the very least, none of that has happened.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson-Payne. Paula, if you would like to respond. Unfortunately, Kate Watts unfortunately isn't available today, so Paula is stepping in to act as the senior officer at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, Councillor Robertson-Payne. Duly noted in the minutes, is clerical oversight that it wasn't circulated from Housing and Neighbourhoods Committee, the report. I will make sure that's done before Friday, so please accept my apologies. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Could I just add that I did ask for it to go on the forward plan, and that was the second time that it was ignored.
I do note that in the minutes as well, it also says the strategic director would discuss with the monitoring officer the rationale as to why this report went to H&N committee and not this committee and report back. If you are happy, Councillor Robinson-Payne, I'm happy to undertake that. I'll try and find out what has happened with it. It may be that there has been a decision that it is more appropriate onto housing and neighbourhoods, but at the very least we need to find out what the rationale is and an answer so that we can show that it's been properly followed up.
Thank you, Chair, but I would like to add that has been to this committee before, and I just think the environmental team does deal with this, so I do think it is important to come back to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate what you're saying. Continuing on, page 6. Councillor Paula Waters-Bunn.
Thank you. Point 3 on the page, which is just the second paragraph down, mentioned the issue of illegal parking by residents on grass verges, hedges, overhanging trees and shrubs, etc. The strategic director was going to report back, was going to have a look into the matter, and that's nowhere to be seen. I haven't heard anything, nothing's come back, it's not on the forward plan either. And it also mentioned about a social media campaign, as we were in lockdown at the time, and it would have been an opportune moment for people to cut their hedges and trees back, and that hasn't happened either, and now we're in June.
Thank you. Paula?
Yep. Again, my apologies, Councillor Waters-Bunn. We'll make a note of it. I'll get committee services to follow up and make sure that the committee gets an update. Understand completely that we're now in June, which is probably not the best time for cutting anything back. But equally, your point is taken, and I apologise.
Thank you.
Councillor Fairhead?
Yes, it's item number 5, it's the WRE. I was just wondering, with the changes, with who was selected to go on the committee, I wondered whether Councillor Carpenter was still going to lead on that, or would that go over to Councillor Bensley now? Because other issues, there's been another IDB board meeting, and there are other issues that affect the fresh water that goes up. There's too much salt going up, it's killing the fish, and I just think it's important that, you know, I know I included them in Penny into the correspondence I had, and I think it's important that we keep on top of this one.
Thank you, Councillor Fairhead. At the moment, Councillor Carpenter is the council's appointee, which of course is made by full council rather than this committee. It is a very, very important issue. I know Councillor Carpenter is fully aware of that. Apologies for speaking for you, Councillor Carpenter, but I'm sure you don't disagree. At the moment, I believe the intention is for Councillor Carpenter to stay on that public sector board, outside body rather. But I'm sure if there is an issue, you know, we will resolve it if it was required. And as chairman of the committee, I will also take a very active interest, and certainly myself and Councillor Carpenter are discussing a wide range of issues. In fact, I think I'm slightly irritating her with the number of times I'm asking her questions at the moment. But, you know, at the moment, there's no plan for change. I think that's the current intention. So we've dealt with page 6, page 7. Councillor Waters-Bunn.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question really on what we resolved on page 7, and an update on what's actually happened with this technical assistant. please.
Paula?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got an update from our Head of Property. The technical post has been appointed to. Lady's name, officer, is Rachel Harrison. Because we're still in lockdown, we're doing social distancing, then I haven't personally met Rachel yet, but I understand she's now undertaking a playground audit, so she's getting out and about. And the proposal is that a report will come to this committee in November of this year. The audit's going to include play areas, the ownership on operation of them in terms of who owns the assets and who maintains them, and with the addition of open space information as well. Section 106 funding will also be reviewed and included as part of November's report. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Chair, can we make sure that that's on the forward plan for November, please?
More than happy to, but we're just technically to put that on when we get to item 4. If
Okay,
that's
thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I keep on turning myself off. Page 7, no other questions or questions. So page 8. Can't see anything. So can I just have a proposer to confirm the minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Seconder, Councillor Bensley. And all in favour? Thank you. So moving on to item 4, the forward plan, which is on page 9. I assume we can just have it minuted that we need to have the play spaces added to the forward plan for November. Is there any other questions or comments from the committee? Councillor Bensley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to highlight, and forgive me, Councillor Robinson-Payne, I just want to highlight the Roman Place car park again and where we are on that, because Kerry has been fighting for that car park to be looked at for quite some time now, and I just don't want to lose momentum on that, because I felt as though other past committee meetings we were getting somewhere on that, and I would like to have that looked into, please.
Thank you. Sorry, Miranda was. Okay. I've turned myself off again. I believe the Head of Customer Services has a response on that.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bensley. So you'll remember from the last Environment Committee that members agreed that we should go back to the Great Yarmouth Transport and Infrastructure Steering Group to try and get a commitment from that group that Norfolk County Council can plan to have a full resurface work for Roman Place at some point in the future. They recognised on advice given by the Borough Council officers and Norfolk County Council officers that the funds were not currently in the budget, but it was noted, it was agreed to be noted by the steering group, but the steering group recognised this wasn't going to be in the foreseeable future when some remedial works, which we discussed at the Environment Committee, could proceed. But the commitment for Norfolk County Council to have Roman Place on a forward programme at some point for a full resurface was given and approved.
Councillor Bensley.
Yes, thank you for that. That's brilliant, thank you. And can I just ask Councillor Robinson-Payne if she's...
Well, I have no issue, through the chair obviously, but I have absolutely no issue if Councillor Robinson-Payne has a view she wishes to express.
Thank you, Chair, and it would be through the Chair, but thank you, James, for raising that. I am very pleased because I'm very disappointed with, obviously, as you can imagine, with the way it has been dealt with and just being sort of pushed away up a corner, but hopefully it won't be because the residents are not happy and I'm certainly not going to let it go. So Norfolk County better listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson-Payne. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if you might put on the use of pesticides on our verges, etc., for discussion. I'm getting a lot of pressure from parish councils saying that we are not following certain procedures that they would like to see none of their area used for pesticides for future. Could you look into that?
Do we have a, is there any, Mr. Silverwood?
I can take that back, Chair, and have a look at that. We've had an inquiry as well, so
yeah.
I
think
I'm
at this
satisfied that we are following procedures, but we can take that away and check.
If you're happy, Malcolm, is it okay if we first make a separate inquiry and see if we can handle it through internally, and then if we need to take it as a formal report, obviously we can.
As long as I get a report back on what's happening, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Waters-Bunn.
Thank you, Chair. Talking of pesticides, can I mention pesticides at the cemetery over at the Creme as well? I was going to bring it up under the bereavement bit, but if we're looking into pesticides, can we also acknowledge that there's an issue at the Creme, which I can happily give further details of?
Yep, sure. Happy to pull that together. Yeah.
Thank you. And did you have something to add as well? And yeah, so we can add that into, and I think Paul has also got something she wanted to.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to sort of suggest that the forward plan maybe highlights a report which is slightly broader, and it probably fits with an agenda item that you have on today's agenda, which is how the Borough Council can support biodiversity, which could look at pesticides and the wider issues about horticulture, if that's a good suggestion, Chair.
I'm quite happy with that suggestion. Is there support from the committee to that? So if, Malcolm, is that supporting of asking a further? Perfect. So can I have a proposer for the forward plan with the addition of the play parks report in November and also the biodiversity report? I've got Penny just put her hand up first, Councillor Waters-Bunn, but would you like to be seconder? Excellent. So Councillor Waters-Bunn, seconder. Is the committee in support? Fantastic. So moving on to the next item, which is the carbon reduction, the pathway to net zero. Before we move on to our substantive business and this report, we have got a presentation from Mr. Asher Mims, who's the Executive Director of the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research. This is going to be going via YouTube, and I can see you at the back, and I assume my colleagues can see you at the front. So, Sammy, in terms of technology, do we just start straight off? So, Mr. Mims, if you'd like to begin at your leisure.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm sorry that I'm not there in person, and I'd love to come to Great Yarmouth on a midsummer's evening, but family and other commitments stopped that from happening. I'm just trying to actually find my presentation, which, as always with these things, don't quite work as they should.
Asher will share it for you.
Oh, okay.
So it should come up on your screen.
Yeah, that's one. That's
lovely.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Are you okay with my sound there and all those bits and bobs?
Yeah, I think everybody can hear. Yeah.
Good. Good. Right. Okay. So yeah. So sorry to not be there in person. I'd love to, and yeah, big fan of Great Yarmouth. Even take small holidays there, even though I only live over here in Norwich. So thank you for the invitation. And really, I was just going to sort of present a bit of what I've presented to other local authorities and chief executives of the councils and the Norfolk Climate Change Partnership and others. So we'll just look at really just to look at sort of Great Yarmouth and climate change, and then of course very happy to take questions in particular on anything that I haven't been clear on, or your other ideas. And just to explain, the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research, we're headquartered at the University of East Anglia. We're a partnership of 4 UK universities all working on what to do about climate change. And this year we're 21 years old, so we've been around a while and had a big influence on climate change research and also climate change policy and some of the things that for reasons that climate change has come up the agenda as well. So that's enough of background information, please. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this is, well, hopefully you'll recognise this. This is a drawing of Norfolk and a quick overview of what we think is going to happen by the middle of this century under a sort of medium level of global warming. So not the extreme and not the minimum either. So this is almost the path that we're on at the moment with carbon dioxide emissions going into the atmosphere. And just quickly, what is global warming? It's burning all of the fossil fuels that are safely stored underground in coal, oil and gas, releasing that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, traps the infrared rays of the sun and warms our atmosphere, and that's exactly what's happening. And nearly all of that, more than 90% of that, is down to man-made emissions, not natural factors. But natural factors do absolutely have an influence, but not a particularly big one in our current era. So what have we got here? So Norfolk, let's balance some things. So we're looking at about minus 30% of summer rainfall, decline in summer rainfall. But when it does rain, it's going to rain much harder and more intensely. And so we have quite big bounds around floods. So floods might be somewhere between 3 and 35%. So hotter, drier summers, warmer, wetter winters. But when it does rain in summer, it's really going to rain, and we see some of this already. This isn't not just about in the future. We're seeing these weather patterns already. Coastal erosion, I think you guys are well placed to know about coastal erosion. We're looking at, this is by the end of the century for that one, but by the way, about 40 millimetres of sea level rise. It's less to do with the exact amount of sea level rise. It's much more to do with storminess, overtopping, when all the tides and things come together. And somebody just there was speaking about the saline intrusions that are becoming more frequent into the air and into the Broads. And actually, as a keen sailor and fisherman on the River Yare myself, there's lots and lots of increasingly reports of this happening. So that is all partly related to sea level rises as well. It's not purely just something that happens to be happening. We would expect to see, Norfolk obviously is quite an agricultural area, we'd expect to see about a 3% decline in wheat yield. And that poor old butterfly in the middle, you might recognise it as one of our iconic ones for here. It's the swallowtail butterfly. And well, sadly, it's kind of extinct, but it just doesn't quite know it yet. It doesn't persist under 1.5 degrees of global warming, or its food plant doesn't persist under 1.5 degrees of global warming. We're currently at 1 degree of global warming already. However, I need to balance out all this doom and gloom with some positive things. So things like 170,000 electric cars were most recently sold. We've seen solar panels. If we travel around the region or get the train down to London, we see the rise in solar panels, which is increased massively in the last 10 years. So there are positives as well as benefits. And Great Yarmouth and quite a lot of this coast, of course, knows about the amount of electricity that's or the amount of turbines currently going in or already installed in the North Sea, and that 40 gigawatt target is easily within sight, is well within sight. And I think it was just last month, because actually the weather wasn't so good. It was, what did we do? About nearly 50% of the UK's electricity came from renewable energy, and that was mostly wind power. So huge changes, not only in what the impacts of global warming are, but how to respond to global warming and air quality issues as well. So that's just a quick overview of what we expect to see here, or what we're seeing already. Actually, we're well on track for these impacts. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to talk quickly, because this was about net zero, but I don't think we can talk about anywhere coastal, especially in the context of the east of England, without just sort of nodding to coastal erosion and sea level rise. Don't read this big solid chunk of text. It basically says that at the moment, the shore is accreting around Great Yarmouth, so the sand is piling up. It's not being eroded as it is further, in Hemsby and other places further up on the coast. But it actually says there that the two piers are now above the high water mark, because the land is actually accreting. So that was just to talk about adaptation. Sea level rise, coastal erosion. We already talked a little bit about saline intrusion and how that happens and the impacts. So next slide, please. And this is just a sort of a quick summary of what we see for all of the east of England coast, not just Great Yarmouth, but it does refer at the bottom there to high erosion will, of course, enhance rates of longshore drift, which actually you're benefiting from, which may pose threats to the major ports of Great Yarmouth, Felixstowe and Harwich. So that's basically clogging up the ports. But of course, ports are dredged. But then we've got historical ports, things like Dunwich, partly is, and it became a deserted port city because of it got blocked up basically because of accretion of things. But that's unlikely to happen now. But then we do have all the other impacts: coastal erosion, frequent storm surges, such as saline intrusion, weakened cliffs, and anything that happens on the coast is cause and effect. So if something's happening further up the coast, then it has an impact further down the coast. And you can see this all over the East Anglia coast, where coastal protection has been put in, but then what that does is it tends to erode away further down the coast from somewhere else, and you can see that yourself. So let's skip on from that and start talking a bit more about net zero. But I didn't want to talk about Great Yarmouth without talking about just a little bit about the coastal issues. So this is sort of going to the net zero, and we've just taken out really to the bigger picture here. So this is along the bottom there, you can see years, and going up the side is the amounts of gigatons of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. The black line is how much carbon dioxide has gone into the atmosphere, and you can see that it's cumulatively increasing, and the only time it decreases is when there's some sort of big economic crisis. And you'll have already worked out that 2020 there, the drop is because of COVID. So, of course, in particular, the first lockdown, sort of the first global lockdown, productivity and GDP declined significantly, and so did carbon dioxide emissions. What happens next? There's the Build Back Better meme. So what happens next? We wait to see, but it's probably fair to say, well, this is work that the Tyndall Centre does, and so we'll be putting this out in November for the UN Climate Summit that's in Glasgow. We'll put out the 2021 figures. Not allowed to say exactly what the figures are, but if you look at any source, you can see that the emissions are bouncing back really rather rapidly. So this plunge doesn't look like it's going to persist, exactly like it didn't with all the other economic crises. The emissions just came back to where they were before and carried on from the same trajectory. Now that pale pink line going down, that's actually where we would need to be if we were aiming for net zero CO2 into the atmosphere. So could we part next slide, please? And this is, sorry for this slightly complicated graph, but this is explaining the UN Paris Agreement. So net zero is all about the UN and Paris Agreement agreed in Paris in December 2015. all 196 countries of the UN, agreed to aim for a goal of 2 degrees of global warming, or at best 1.5 degrees of global warming. So ideally somewhere between 1.5 and 2 degrees of global warming. We're already at 1 degree of global warming, so you can imagine that's quite a steep challenge that's gone there. Now, the only way to get to 1.5 degrees of warming, which is net zero, is to have net negative emissions, which is where the term net zero comes from. It actually means, as you can see on the green line, that the green line goes below the net zero line. So that actually means that emissions need to be sucked out of the atmosphere. It goes beyond no more carbon dioxide emissions. It actually goes to let's get the carbon dioxide emissions out of the atmosphere that are already there. And that's a big, huge, enormous question of technology that doesn't exist at any known scale yet. So I'll leave that there. But in terms of the UN and in terms of the Glasgow summit in November, which is an important summit because it's the 5 years after Paris, that's what Paris agreed, what's going to be agreed next as more stringent targets and policies to try and get down below 2 degrees at minimum. We're currently heading for about 3.8 degrees, and that was that first drawing that I showed you was about, well, what happens in Norfolk with 3.8 degrees. We'll come back to that if I've sort of jumped over that a little bit. So we'll park that there. But next slide, please. Now this is slightly cut off, or maybe it's cut off on my slide. This is Norfolk. This is, sorry, I think the slides we made slightly smaller, so it would have had a title. This is the net zero journey for Norfolk. So again, it's the years along the bottom, it's the amount of carbon dioxide up the side there, and the black line is how much carbon dioxide reduction has happened already in Norfolk, and the green line is this rather sort of precipitous ski slope as to where emissions would need to go next for Norfolk to play its role in that global net zero target. I did forward on to Sammy, and I'm not suggesting that you all want to read it, but if anybody really is interesting, I've actually sent you a report. I ran the numbers for Great Yarmouth. So perhaps if we could go to the next slide, please. Very similar looking curve, as you'll have guessed, but this is so maybe you can see the titles and I can't. But this is exactly the same thing for Great Yarmouth, and Sammy has the report if you really want to drill into the numbers. So what we've done there is that global picture, shared among countries, fair shared among countries for the amount of CO2 that can be emitted into the future. Then what is that budget for the UK? Then that budget down to all of the local authorities, every local authority, and then I ran the numbers for Great Yarmouth. So that's the net zero for Great Yarmouth, and that is that green line there. So you can see good progress has been made because of national policies already. That green line is 13% per year reductions in CO2 out to 2050. Now you can imagine, 13% is a lot of CO2 reduction. We just skip slide, but that's okay. Stay on this one. 13% is a lot. 13% at the beginning is easier because it's the low-hanging fruit. But then when you get further into the future, it gets more difficult, because if you've taken the low-hanging fruit, then 13% of what is left becomes more difficult, and then there's the issue of net zero, of actually sucking the CO2 out of the atmosphere, which isn't a Great Yarmouth thing. That's a national and international policy technology issue. And again, I think the top, maybe it's not, the top might not be cut off for you guys. But this is just looking at also, and somebody was already talking a little bit in the meeting already about this, about the relationship actually between sort of poverty and emissions. So the top 10% of emitters are responsible for about half of all emissions. So it doesn't necessarily come from people who have less income, but on the other hand, there's a balance there, because the future does mean and will be, and you've got some of them already because of the renewable and the offshore industry, green jobs and new ways of building houses, and the new ways of doing things. And so these present quite a lot of benefits also. So if we could just and I should just say the darker red areas are the poorer areas, if that's a fair way of explaining. Could we go to the next slide, please? And I just wanted to show exactly the same for Norwich, actually. Just as a sort of a compare and contrast, the dark red areas are the poorer areas. And actually, if you look closely at the data, and you can find this on the Norfolk Insight website, there's other ways. This data is shown in other ways. Yarmouth obviously gets talked about as a poor place, and it is. But Norwich is also a poor place, and that perhaps doesn't get spoken about so much. And so from somebody who works around climate change, renewable energy, build back better, green jobs, it all seems to make a very good story for me in the east of England of what could be done differently for the benefits of lots of people, and not just the wealthy people living around the edges there and out in the suburbs and the countryside. Could we go to next slide, please? And here I have an example. So this is the economics of CO2-free energy. This is run for this is the LEP, so this is Norfolk and Suffolk. I could have just shown you Norfolk numbers, but anyway, so there's various ways of doing this. This is done by economists in Leeds, so you could say that. So New Anglia, Norfolk, Suffolk, the LEP, or the citizens within it, spent £2,809 million on their energy and fuel bills, and this is 2018 data, so it's a little bit out of date, but it won't be far off. But then, and in particular, if you're thinking about poverty and fuel poverty, that's 7% of everybody's salaries or everybody's incomes that's actually spent on energy for companies that are far, far away, that don't necessarily invest here at all. Many of them overseas. So that's 7% of the entire GDP just whizzes off into its energy bills. Now, if that was done differently, and if that was invested into sort of more local, profitable energy, low carbon options, retrofitting of existing housing stock and the lot, that would save about 724 million a year. Data's a few years old. And for the whole LEP, if you turn that into job years, that's 9,000 years of jobs by 2035. Sorry, I didn't say by 2035, which would also reduce the CO2 emissions by 25%. But I'm not really too worried about CO2 emissions here. I'm more talking about much more clever economic ways of building back better and using the resources more locally, more regionally, basically to create jobs and to benefit people. Yeah, I'll park that there, because again I could spend ages on each bit. So please go to the next slide, please. And so having this is sort of less targeted at Great Yarmouth, really, because you're the Great Yarmouth decision makers, and of course some of my Norwich is Norwich based, because that's where I live and I see things happening. not just me, colleagues have been, colleagues not just within academia, wider, have been sort of pushing for a climate change commission. So a body that could really lead, guide, scrutinise, do sort of boutique pieces of work to really point the direction and the pathways involving everybody for what could happen sort of in this region and the wider region. You'll already know better than me how the planning, the new houses that have to go into Norfolk, been told to go into Norfolk, and there's some really interesting sort of planning things there, which does absolutely come back to councils. So in the Norfolk Broads, or just outside the Broads, and these are actually social housing, are still being built with oil heating. Yeah, that's obsolete already. That's absolute fossil fuels, and it's really expensive. So, why is it that the effectively the councillors, so not the councillors, the planning officers are allowing these to be built? It's it's out of date before these things have even been built, and it only adds to people's fuel poverty, especially if they maybe don't have so much income to begin with, because that's why they're in social housing. Big issue of water. There's not enough water in the east of England already, and that's Norwich numbers, 50k homes. But where exactly is that water going to come from? Anglian Water is working on this, and this isn't an unknown. But that's a huge demand. And when we're also thinking about agriculture, Broads, biodiversity, the tourism that comes because of that water, then 50,000 homes, all of which have increasing water use now, because we've all increased our water use massively compared to say 20 years ago. That's a real challenge as well, but can be put into the planning. It doesn't have to be a challenge if you have water efficient houses rather than any old house with any old water scheme. Similarly, the transport. So that's 50,000 homes. Let's assume that they all have 2 cars each. That's an extra 100,000 cars. That's not just about CO2, that's about NOx, that's about air quality, that's about congestion, all the things that you know about transport already. And you might have seen on one of the earlier slides when I showed Norfolk's profile for its pathway to net zero. We're a county that, of course, is car heavy, so 39% of our emissions come from transport in Norfolk. Most local authorities, that would be, if it was a sort of metropolitan urban, it'd be about a quarter or a third. So we're actually sort of one of the biggest dependent on private cars, private transport, local authorities. So that clearly could be done better, but in particular planning going forwards. What sort of planning is needed, that we don't just say, it's fine as long as the houses have 2 car parking spaces each. And this is very local to Norwich. I'm not sure if people would know about it. This is too much outside of Norwich. Was a couple of years, last year came to the fruition. It was turned down. Anglian Square couldn't be redeveloped for reasons to do with cultural heritage and lots of other reasons. Tiny apartments meant for overseas investors, not for people. But from my point of view, I was looking at the car parks. And the car parks and the citizens who would be living there, that was an extra 24,000 car movements a day. So and there was a 1,200 space car park and cars for residents. So can you imagine what that does to air quality in somewhere like Norwich, which anyway already has very bad air quality, which I won't discuss here for various reasons. So it's looking at not just the number of cars, it's looking at it in the round of planning, the water, the transport, how many car movements, if there's going to be lots of shops, that sort of thing. And all of and these things are being recommended. So the oil heating in social housing, 24,000 car movements a day are being recommended to councillors. And as an advocate here, that's where councillors can step in, I think, and say, actually, we need to build back better and think differently about this. And the last one is really just a call for exactly what you've done here, which is called on some of the very local know-how that keen, enthusiastic, wants to get involved, doesn't necessarily just want to be doing things at the UN or national government level, but really place-based climate action. Very happy to feed in wherever wanted or not wanted. That's absolutely fine. So thank you for listening. I'll finish there. And of course, really happy to take questions now and or follow up some other time if you prefer.
Thank you, Mr. Mims. Are there any questions from the committee? I don't see any hands up. So thank you so much for your time. It was a very interesting presentation and I certainly found it very useful. So thank you for your time. And
yep.
So moving on, we've now got our substantive report for the carbon reduction, the pathway to net zero. The report was going to be presented by Kate Watts, but obviously Paula will be stepping in. So if you have anything you wish to add to the report, Paula.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you to Asha for joining us tonight. I think that was really quite a good way to set the scene for this report, which we bring forward to Environment Committee. In actual fact, hopefully you've been able to read the contents of the report. I'm more than happy to answer as many questions as I can on it. Just to summarise, this committee agreed to measure the Borough Council as an organisation's carbon footprint. That work was delayed slightly in starting because it actually coincided with the very week we went into lockdown in the 23rd of March 2020. Carbon Trust therefore couldn't get on site and we couldn't collect the data. I am pleased to report that the data collection has now been completed in that project. Therefore we are on track as an exec team to bring forward a report to you in line with the forward plan. I'm pleased to say it's on the forward plan, that one, so that you will be able to have a look at what the actual carbon footprint is of our organisation, and that will be contextualised within a proposed environmental sustainability strategy, so that we've got some firm actions, or we will recommend to committee some firm actions around how we can get on this, achieve the pathway to net zero in line with all of the recommendations of the Tyndale Centre and other people. So we've got, I would say to the committee chair that we've got the committee and the council has a role as a leadership in sustainability and net zero. It also obviously has a guardianship of the landscape and the public realm, and therefore anything that this council does as an organisation, internally and externally with partners, and indeed looking houses, roads, transport, maintenance of open spaces, and indeed collecting people's rubbish, is really, really important, and it all can link together. And indeed, as we were reminded earlier from Councillor Robinson-Payne, the selective licensing, there's a big environmental agenda in that selective licensing scheme in terms of energy efficiency and making sure that private sector as well as social housing stock has good insulation and is getting all of the benefit from from the grants that are available. So there's quite a lot of work going on. I do strongly believe it will come back to this committee when it was agreed to come back, so that's good. In terms of what we're doing, I'm happy to answer questions. There is an element in the report, the table in the middle explains what we've been doing, even though we hadn't been able to progress our carbon management measurement last year. So we have started to make small steps, and all good environmentalists say that the way that we will achieve net zero, or indeed carbon reduction, are small steps, because that is the way we all can contribute. I'll stop there, and I will do my best to answer questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Carpenter, but before I'll just very quickly just make a comment that this is a very small report by the standards of what we receive at council, and councils and committees, but actually in some ways this is possibly one of the most important reports we have coming through. The carbon change agenda is absolutely essential. The carbon neutral agenda or carbon zero agenda is absolutely essential that we get right. And I think as a committee, we're obviously doing a number of fairly low level steps in it, but actually getting the ball rolling and kind of progressing through this will result in potentially quite significant and fundamental changes on a policy level to how the Borough Council conducts itself over a 5, 10, 20, even 50-year timescale. So I think as a committee we have to recognise that this is actually a very, very significant piece of work, and as a collective we are talking about things which aren't always going to be easy to do, because we are talking about genuine fundamental change at the very basic levels of our organisation. Councillor Carpenter?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I totally agree with what you've just said. And this is the committee, obviously. I speak for myself, but I think I speak for others. We are very passionate about this subject and all subjects which come into the committee, so I'm pleased to see it. I just wanted to pick up on 5.4. It says that Great Yarmouth Borough currently reduces less CO2 emissions than other councils across Norfolk. I mean, that's a positive, and obviously we can't really stand on our laurels on that. So obviously there's room for improvement. Can I also ask? I take it we are liaising with all our other councils within Norfolk on this particular subject. Paula, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Carpenter, through the Chair. Yes, we are. I mean, effectively, one of the recommendations today is to go one step further and appoint a member to the climate change partnership that Norfolk has introduced 18 months ago. So officers have been, Head of Environmental Services James Wilson, who sends his apologies tonight, would have been here but was unable to for a family reason. He has been attending, and actually in terms of the Community Renewal Fund applications that were submitted 2 weeks ago, we did participate in a number of those to do with net zero. So yes, we do join up wherever possible, because the climate and carbon doesn't stop at the boundaries of our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments by the committee? Councillor Bensley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight to all members on page 19, please, under the waste heading, the facet programme that we're now going to do. This is going to be a very exciting project, and that will support and encourage our tourism and hospitality industry, especially at this time. With smart bins and reverse vending are two options that the team are looking at. This will provide the tools for the consumer to recycle and help with our circular economy, and also that will provide great comfort in the consumer being able, or providing the tools for them to be able to recycle their litter and everything that they have. So that's a really good piece of work, and I look forward to working with Norfolk County Council and other partners in Europe for Great Yarmouth on that project. So I really recommend every member here just to take a look at that in their patch, because it's really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bensley. I believe Project Facet is on our forward plan for our meeting in September. Anything like that? Any more questions or comments? If not, I will move to the recommendations. So we've got three next steps. First one is to confirm ongoing support for the finalisation of the carbon footprint mapping work for the council to be completed by September 2021, alongside the development of an action plan to reduce the council's carbon footprint. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Carpenter, seconder. Councillor Bird was ever so slightly quicker. Councillor Bensley. All in favour? Okay. Sorry, Paul, I've just seen, Councillor Waters, I've seen you've got your light on. Do you want to say anything?
Sorry, I just want a bit of clarification before we go to the vote, if possible. 7.3 is asking to allocate £25,000 from Special Project Reserve, And then 8.1 is asking members to approve funding of £30,000. Are we looking to be allocating £55,000 or why is 25,000 in 7.3 and 30,000 in 8.1?
You are completely right, Councillor Watersbun. I'm assuming the correct figure is 30,000, but can we just get confirmation on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, my apologies. It's a typographical error. The request is for £30,000 out of special reserves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for the first bullet point, are members in approval? All in favour? Yeah. So that's approved. The second item is to recommend to full council the appointment of a Great Yarmouth Borough Council elected member to sit on the Norfolk elected members Climate Change Partnership Board. Councillor Carpenter? Button, please.
Yes, Chairman. I think it would perhaps be appropriate that the chairman of this committee be put forward for that.
I rather modestly agree. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Bird? All in favour? So that passes. And then for item 3, to allocate £30,000 from the Special Projects Reserve to develop an environmental sustainability strategy and action plans to detail our pathway to net zero. Proposer, Councillor Allison, seconder, Councillor Hammond. All in favour? Passes. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 6, the bereavement services presentation, which I believe is being given by Miranda Lee, Head of Customer Services, and also Janice Leader, Bereavement Services Manager.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our presentation this evening. This is an opportunity for Janice and I to give you an overview of what's been happening over the last few years in relation to our crematorium and cemeteries, what we have progressed, new initiatives that have taken place, and a look at our current plans in development and some ideas that we have for the future. Just having problems with my clicker. Here we go. That's fine. So, as an overview of what bereavement services is all about, the crematorium opened in 1968, and in the summer of 2018, we were pleased to be able to celebrate our 50th anniversary with a public open day attended by Her Worship the Mayor. We operate a busy crematorium, meaning that we undertake regular maintenance and necessary works to improve and replace our equipment. Towards the end of 2016, our cremator plant was replaced and we commissioned 2 non-abated machines. Non-abatement meaning that we also needed to participate in burden sharing as part of the National Cameo scheme around meeting targets to reduce emissions of mercury across the UK. If we reflect back on the prior presentation and report, we know how important the focus is at the moment around cleaning the environment further for the future. DEFRA is currently in the process of reviewing the key environmental issues associated with crematoria, so we will hopefully know more about what this means for the industry over the coming months. This year, as well as some other projects which we'll come on to later, we will be also progressing plans for the replacement of the original chapel roof and surrounding complex. In addition to the crematorium, we have the cemeteries. We're responsible for the council cemeteries and also undertake officiating of burials and interments at Caister Village and St Nicholas Church Cemetery. Our grounds are maintained by the grounds maintenance team from GYB Services, who have a regular base and daily presence at the Magdalen Lawn Caister Borough Cemetery, and they service both the Golston Old Cemetery and the Yarmouth cemeteries from there. Janice and the bereavement team are based at the crematorium, from which they provide a range of services, advice, assistance, and they work very closely with the funeral directors, medical referees, ministers and celebrants, where collectively they work to support families through what can be some difficult and sometimes distressing times. So, as a visual reminder of the crematorium locations in the vicinity, we, along with Kings Lynn, Ipswich Borough, are the only local authority crematoriums spanning the area, the remainder being part of either private groups like Dignity, Westerly, or the Memoria Company, or a private and independent. Following the opening of Ella Crematorium in 2016, we have 2 more crematoriums at Cromer and Breckland, Breckland being the most recent to open in July 2019. For us, our catchment area continues to cover the majority of the borough, including some of the neighbouring Broadland and Suffolk areas, especially around northern Lowestoft. If we take a closer look at our cemeteries now, this table gives an overview of the number of full burial and ash interment plots that have been purchased over the last 5 years. Numbers do fluctuate slightly, but over the period, the average is around 80 burials and between 60 and 70 ash interments each year. Of course, in relation to ashes, there are more options available to families, including strewing in our cemetery grounds or elsewhere, laying them to rest in one of our sanctum or panorama vaults, and sometimes the ashes are retained indefinitely by the family. Considering the estimated ongoing new plot requirements, we also need to plan for what space we have available for the future, and based on our current usage, how many years we can expect our current space will accommodate the need of the borough. This is a guide only, but it does help us with our future planning, and it enables us to look at further opportunities to create more space within our existing cemeteries, but also helps to inform our business cases as over the next couple of years we look to explore the necessity for future additional land. Cremations continue to increase in popularity compared to burial. According to the national statistics published in 2019, cremations represent around 79% compared to burial each year. However, for some, burials are still the chosen option, often because of tradition or due to individual beliefs and faiths. So that's it for me for a moment. I'm now going to hand over to Janice to tell you a little bit more about the team and the initiative and plans that we have and will be taking forward.
Thank you, Miranda, and good evening to everybody. We're a small team at the crematorium comprising of 3 cremator technicians who rotate their work over a 3-week basis, working as a technician, a chapel attendant, and a burial officiant. We also have 3 bereavement officers who work on the administration based in the office at the crematorium, and myself. We're supported by experienced casual workers who cover holidays, sickness, and also the situation that we're experiencing at the moment with the pandemic. We cremate, on average, 1,450 cremations a year. Before the opening of the crematorium at Ella, this was between 1,950 and 2,000 cremations each year. We recognise that we have lost 25% of our business. However, we have retained the business within the borough, extending into Broadland, and a lot around the Waveney area. Again, this is a matter of choice for the bereft. And if a family are living in Beccles or Kessingland, the likelihood of them wanting to drive over to the crematoria at Galston is quite remote. We have some excellent points to offer at our crematorium. We have one of the few buildings with a waiting room. We have a really good-sized chapel. We have an indoor cloister where floral tributes are placed and mourners can spend time together after the service for reflection. All our cemeteries are open every day of the year, and this includes the Chapel of Remembrance, which is located in the Magdalen Cemetery. The Chapel of Remembrance houses the Book of Remembrance, and the pages are turned in this book each and every day of the year. Next slide, please. We offer a modern media system which is extremely popular. Webcasting has been a huge benefit to families unable to attend due to the restrictions of the pandemic. Initially, we thought that this would be for family members living abroad or some distance away who would be able to make the journey to Galston. There has been a slight easing of the restrictions, increasing the attendance from 30 to 40 in the chapel. Throughout this time, we have continued to provide the service of the webcast. We can also provide visual tributes. We have screens both outside the chapel itself and within the chapel. We're able to display single or multiple photographs. There is an extensive library of music. The choices of the family are downloaded overnight to our system, checked the following morning by our chapel attendants before the first service of the day. Next slide, please. New initiatives. In 2018, we offered and introduced our own funeral packages to provide an affordable alternative option for families. It's an alternative to the traditional arrangement. It keeps us competitive with other crematoria within the area, and the services that we provide competes also with those companies advertising cremation only on the television. We are there to support our families every step of the way. The packages have been very well received by families, and in the last 2 years, we have arranged an average of 55 funerals per year. And this has been achieved with a minimal of advertising. This will change with the launch of our bespoke bereavement service website, and this is due to come into play at the end of the year, and we will talk about that again a little bit later. Next slide, please. We have above-ground vaults that are located in our peaceful garden of remembrance. We're about to commence the second phase with completion towards the end of this year. You'll see the panorama is the central vault in the centre of the picture at the top of the page, and surrounding this are a circle of low-level sanctums. Each contain 32 vaults, so it's 64 vaults. Marked and unmarked strewing areas. Originally, a strewing in the unmarked lawn area was what it says, it's unmarked. And we found this as a team very difficult to deal with when families were coming in, checking to see where their family member had been laid to rest. And over the past 60 years, it had been that it could be in that unmarked lawn area. And a member of staff came up with a really good idea, and that was to have 12 trees, 1 tree for each month of the year. We went ahead with this. So we have 12 trees, 1 for each month of the year, blooming in that respective month. This has helped us and helped families. So if we get an inquiry, we can tell people immediately where their loved one is. We have various beds with shrubs and standard roses. We introduced this year a woodland area for cremated remains. This gave us an additional 300 plots. Great GYB services, quicker to say it that way, GYB services maintain the cemeteries. The ground staff work very closely with us, and we know that they will always go that extra mile with empathy and compassion. Next slide, please. Memorials. Memorials are always a personal choice. Some people would like a memorial and others would not. We're always looking for new opportunities that may be an option for families. Again, it's their choice. We have at present curb sets, trees, standard roses, benches, plaques, the Book of Remembrance that we've mentioned before, and also ashes into glass, which is jewellery and ornaments. And again, it's personal choice, but it is very popular. Next slide. Thank you. COVID-19. The pandemic has been really, really difficult for those families and friends who have lost loved ones during this time. We didn't know initially what the demand would be, and within a limited time frame, all of our machinery was serviced and in tip-top condition to cope with whatever may be thrown at us. You'll see from the graph that the second wave was much bigger for us in this area, especially between the months of January and March. Looking at the chapel, we were reduced to 30 chairs, 30 mourners at a time in the chapel, which is very difficult. Recently, on the 17th of May, in fact, this was increased to 40, and we are still able to comply with the social distancing. We also have a screen and speakers outside, and mourners and family who are unable to go into the chapel themselves are able to witness and see the service in progress from outside. Throughout this time, cleaning and sterilising have been very, very important to us. And I can tell you now that every public area is cleaned and sterilised after each service. We've worked closely with funeral directors and ministers and celebrants. We want to continue to offer the services and the individual support and be spot on for the families. Next slide, please. We have so much to look forward to. A new website. Our aim is to have our own platform tailored to bereavement service, to be easy to find, easy to access, and easy to navigate. It will give us the opportunity to promote our services, say who we are, what we do, and to give guidance and help to people when they need it most. The launch of our new website will be round about the same time as the launch of the new tea room. Space, again, so important to us. We always make the best use of the space that we have available in our cemeteries. The new woodland area, as I said, 300 additional cremated remains plots. And now we're in the early stages of exploring for new opportunities, for new grounds for the future. We haven't identified anything at the moment, but this will remain ongoing. The above ground vaults and the additional space, as I said, we'll have the second phase in place at the end of this year. And we'll be looking for similar opportunities for our other cemeteries in the future. Memorials, again, we're always looking for new options. And of course, this will remain ongoing. We have 2 cemetery lodges, one at Galston Old Cemetery and one at Caister Borough. We're working with Property Services on the viability of restoring both of these lodges for residential use. Thank you. Back to Miranda, thank you.
Thanks, Janice. So now on to our tea rooms. This, if you can see, is an artist impression based on our original design proposals. Members will remember giving approval to the business case for this new initiative. And although we commenced the project, we were just about to go out to procurement for the main contract, and then obviously the pandemic kind of took over, so we had to put it on hold just while we focused on other things last year. However, we are now excited, we're moving forward. Procurement is just about complete, and we are any day now about to award the main contract. We're hoping that they'll be on site very shortly. Works will commence over the summer period, and we're aiming for the tea room and new function facility to be in place and open sometime around November this year. So the tea room will be based in the grounds of Magdalen Lawn Cemetery. It will be close by to the crematorium complex and where the current car park is. And obviously, we'll be very mindful as works happen over the summer period that we need to be operational And we need to continue to be able to offer those services in that professional manner. So we will be working very closely with the contractors to make sure that any disruptions are avoided or kept to a minimum, and outside of chapel service hours wherever possible. And obviously it's an ideal time over the summer period with some of the longer days of light to do works into the evening, and maybe even some over the weekends. And we're still looking for new ideas and initiatives for the future to bring forward. On our horizon is that at the moment is to look at the viability and business case to have new grounds somewhere within the borough based on a more natural environment, helping to meet some of our future needs, but also providing our residents some additional options for the future. Obviously, we still have some work to do around this. Sorry, I'm just sorting my account. Obviously, we still have some work to do around this before we can bring forward any proposals to be considered. But this really does seem to be a realistic and logical step to take forward. So if you think about, if anybody is familiar with like your Colney Wood in the Norwich type of area, not necessarily something exactly replicated like that, but something along those sort of lines. But obviously we'll be bringing those thoughts to members at some point in the future. And that's it.
Miranda, sorry, I'm just going to get you to stop 2 seconds because we can hardly hear you. So I'm just going to get them to swap the microphones because it's really jittery. So it's just going in and out.
That's the end of the presentation.
Oh, sorry.
They have swapped the microphone as well. So, thank you. I hope you have been able to hear me, members. Sorry about that. We should have perhaps checked those sounds out earlier. Janice and I would be happy to take any questions. I hope you found that informative in terms of what we've been doing over the last few years. I hope we've been able to provide some updates on some of the plans that are currently in development and some of our ideas for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda, and also thank you, Janice. I have to say, actually, I could hear you fine until you changed your microphone. So, joys of technology. Do any members have any questions? We've got at least 3. So, Councillor Watersbun had a hand up first. Okay. Nevertheless, you might as well. You were first, Councillor Watersbun.
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding the teeth function facility, I'm quite disturbed because I'm sure we agreed for a function capacity for up to 50 people. Now, I know we agreed for it to go through.
Hold that for me from me.
Oh. Hello? I feel like a pop star now. I want to go into karaoke mode. Sorry. Yeah. I thought we agreed for the function capacity to be up to 50, and we agreed for it to be going ahead, but we didn't actually see any plans, I don't believe.
I think there were some drawings with the business case that went through both Policy and Resources Committee and on the full council that were approved. But obviously those are initial drawings until you actually go through the procurement and you work with the contractors to then find out if there are any particular issues that maybe haven't been thought of initially. You don't really have your final design until the end. You're quite right, remembering that we had that discussion around trying to increase the numbers of people that we could facilitate the function area, but the size that we were working with in terms of the costs that we were also trying to keep to in terms of our capital bid just didn't enable that to happen. What it will enable to happen is us to provide some outside space which will increase our capacity as and when needed, and that's development work once we've got the facility up and running. But that was very well remembered.
Thank you. I'm just slightly disappointed that we agreed originally for 50 places for small wakes to occur at the site, and obviously if you're going to have a small wake in that tea room facility, 20 people is a very small number, especially that considering our weather is isn't as beautiful as this most of the year. So I'm very disappointed that just under £500,000 we haven't got a facility big enough to do what we agreed, and I'm somewhat perplexed by it. I thought...
Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, crikey, that's better. Following those discussions, we never amended the report and business case that went through council, so that was as the original. We said we would look at it. So I do appreciate what you're saying, but obviously we have to work with the constraints of the space that we have available, and plus what we can accommodate inside for the capital that was there too. But appreciate your comments.
It's just that would members have agreed for that build for up to 20 people? I don't think I would, personally.
No,
I don't think other members would either.
I can appreciate popular point, Councillor Waterston. I assume we've just got to have a brief delay while your microphone is affected. And so Councillor Cameron next.
Thank you, Chair. Before the pandemic struck, we were looking at coming to the crematorium for visits. Did that bypass me? Have you done any, or will you be doing them in the future?
Anybody, any members of this committee and any other members of the council are welcome to contact myself or Janice, and we'll arrange for you to come down and have a tour. So obviously I think that was mentioned at the Environment Committee before, and that was again said that anybody, if they would like to come down, we'd be more than happy to have you down there and to show you around. Obviously, we just want to keep an eye on what the restrictions are at the moment and just be mindful that we've got services, a number of people attending as well to be mindful of. But absolutely, that's something that we would love to do in the future for you.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fairhead's next, I believe. Do I now need to give it back?
Thank you, Chair. There was two issues that, as you were going through, and one was I was really pleased to hear that you were looking to develop a woodland area for burials, because I think when you look at what they have up in Norwich, or just outside Norwich, it really, really is very good. And I automatically thought of the other side of Bluebell Wood. I don't know if you've looked at any pieces of land yet for that, but you know, the new road that goes round the bypass when you comes out of Belton, it took Bluebell Wood in half. And I know one side of it, as you're going through, on the left-hand side, has been developed for walks, and that's really a nice walk through there. But I don't know what they've done with the other piece, and it was just whether the piece of land was big enough to look at, consider, whatever. The other thing that struck me when you were talking was about the lodges. Are you talking about the lodge in the old cemetery? And that was an issue that I had thought about taking to the preservation group, actually, because of the age of the building and whatever. So I don't know what your plans would be to do that, or whether the preservation group would be able to work with you on that. Just two ideas, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just respond on that. So the cemetery lodges, yes, we have had discussions along with working with our colleagues in property services with the Preservation Trust. They would certainly like to help if they possibly can, and they're obviously providing us with the right type of advice. What we're currently looking at is the viability to bring both lodges back into residential use ourselves. We believe that that is possible. We're just working with our property colleagues at the moment to try and estimate the spend necessary to do that, and then putting them back on the market for rental would provide you know, some two-family homes for people in the future, and whether that's privately rented or social use, yet to be decided. But it's such a shame to have them unused at the moment. So whatever we do in the future, that situation is not going to continue. So it'll either be that we put them back into residential use, or we'll be working with the Preservation Trust to see what else we can do with them.
I won't need one of those. I won't need it, honestly. Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot about YouTube. On Councillor Paula Waters-Bunn point, I am quite concerned because my understanding was also for 50 plus, because obviously, there is a commercial aspect to that as well, and to run, a successful commercial operation, 20 people just won't be enough. So my recollection of it, it was 50. So I don't know if that's got lost in the ether, but I certainly totally agree with my colleague. Thank you. Yeah.
I take that. Create more space in our cemeteries for our future need. But we do need to start thinking about new ground. That's quite right. And new ground does take some time, not only one to kind of obtain, purchase and all the rest of it, but actually to prepare for any type of interment and burial too. So we will be progressing those plans to try and identify new land over the next 2 to 3 years, in the knowledge that at some point we're going to need them. In terms of, what was the other point, sorry?
Sorry, about the loss of 25% of the business.
So if, before Ella opened, so Ella is near Beccles, the closest we had going down on the south coast from us was Ipswich. So it was Ipswich Borough and it was an Acton crematorium. So that's a huge area which was kind of left between either the Golston crematorium, the Ipswich crematoriums, or Bury St Edmunds, possibly a little bit of Norwich trying to service. So when Ella did open, obviously it provided a service to that area. However, we were used to getting that business from Lowestoft and the surrounding areas all the way up to probably Southwold, that type of kind of catchment, and that's been the impact on us. And it was an impact that we raised with members, not necessarily, I don't think of this committee, I think it was Policy and Resources Committee at the time before Ella opened. We were expecting to have a hit, and we did, but it's not as much as what we thought. And what we're trying to do is to make our crematorium the crematorium of choice. So where people maybe have still got connections with the Galston crematorium, maybe families have passed through our services there, we want to make our crematorium stand out to the others in our area, so that if families could choose either ourselves or Ella or another, that hopefully they would be choosing us in the future. So we're trying to do everything that we can, not only to sustain our current business, but to actually increase business for Galston Crematorium.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I just have one quick point I want to raise in relation to the legitimate concerns which have been raised about the tea rooms and the potentially significantly reduced capacity. What is the mechanism to ensure that the revised business case, one assumes, comes under scrutiny, or who will approve, one assumes, the revised business case for it to go forward? Or will it just progress?
At the moment, it will progress as it was approved. Right. What I will do is try and do everything we can to work with the contractors to see what additional capacity we can create. Right. But, you know, we can meet those numbers, but it's not necessarily contained within that one function area of the tea room. And it will also be based on need. Some of our research suggested that we were probably going to be more popular with lower numbers, smaller families, with some of the more established bigger hotels or pubs or places that are currently doing wakes and functions, you know, carrying on and doing those for those larger families. Right. It's a service that's already out there.
Right. Okay. So, sorry, Paula?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just say, in terms of what Miranda's presented to tonight, clearly there were some market forces at work here. So we went out to a competitive tender. The value was over the budget set, and therefore there's been a level of value engineering within the proposal. What we can do is we can take a look at the design again and just check that if there's any room for adjustment. The money was finite in terms of the budget, so the team and the property services team have worked within that budget, but I certainly understand the feeling of the committee, so we'll take that away and have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson-Payne, I am quite keen to try and have it so that we only have one contribution per item, but I suspect this is very pertinent, so...
Well, it was just an observation, really, Chair. It's really regarding committees. I mean, you know, referring to the fact that it came here and then went to P&R and we knew nothing about that, or it might have gone through council, but it kind of slipped under the radar for all of us. In the same way about the selective licensing, things seem to go to one committee, then get lost into another. So I think that needs to be addressed more, that they come to maybe two committees, so we are all up to date with these things. So it's just an observation, Chair.
I accept your point. Maybe what also needs to happen is there needs to be, when there is a timeline of decisions for something, perhaps at the very initial meeting, that needs to be put very explicitly clear, potentially even in the executive summary, so it's right there, clear, so everyone knows that where it will go to the next stage, potentially moving forward. Okay, if there's no further questions, I think all we need to do is just note the report. Does that require a proposer and seconder to just note? And therefore, it doesn't require a proposer and seconder, so I'd just like to thank both Miranda and Janice for their report and for their time. Thank you. Right, so item 7, it does occur... I've turned myself off again. Item 7 is the street cleaning improvement plan update. It has occurred to me that I may just, for probity's sake, need to declare an interest that I'm now obviously a company director of GYBS, so just to cover and get that declared. Obviously, the report is here to be, which will be received, and for us to make comments and then to note. And so I'll pass over to Chris to see if you've got any further comments you want to add to the report.
Thank you, Chair. The street cleansing improvement plan. This is an update since the last Environment Committee in November. Listed are the activities since that last meeting. Responses are also in the report to all of the actions in the plan. Improvements in the street cleansing plan across the borough. So a couple of the highlights. There's more litter bin capacity, and the borough is ready for the opening of the season and when lockdown restrictions were lifted. And the team obviously worked very, very hard in preparing the borough and getting it ready. So that's just a very, very quick sort of run through of the report, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Before I go to questions, I just want to quickly thank, and on the record, both yourself and your team for all the hard work you do on what is often a very difficult and thankless task. And, and inevitably as a committee, we are always driving for improved services and better and ever better provision and value for money for our council or for our residents. But that doesn't mean we don't appreciate that you do an awful lot of work, and much of it is of a very, very high standard. So moving on, do the committee have any questions? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. I would also like to join you in congratulating the team. This is a complete turnaround of system working, which was needed, and it's been delivered. And obviously I see at 6.1 improvements delivered, you actually do say about the street cleaning standards across the borough have vastly improved. And I have to say, yes, it has. And I'm really delighted and pleased for the team, and obviously the HIT squad as well. The high profile targeting areas across the borough, that's extremely successful and very well run. So I'd have to congratulate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, same again, really. Fantastic work. I've noticed a massive difference in street cleanliness even today. It's in the HIT squad in Bradwell North, doing a great job, and I hope even after March 2022 funding can be available to keep these guys very hard work and very conscientious. There is just one thing what I have noticed, and residents have been contacting me recently about grass cutting. Something just seems a bit of a miss at the moment with grass cutting, I feel. I don't know if the same number of guys are cutting the grass at the minute, but there just doesn't seem to be that force going round cutting grass, and they're chasing it all the time. That's just the only thing, but apart from that, everything else is brilliant.
Okay. Mr. Silverwood?
Thank you for that. Regarding the grass cutting, the crews have remained the same and are the same. This part of the season, we've got rain, then sun, then rain, then sun. So we've got areas what we cut last week, and we've got complaints this morning, less than a week later, that it's shot up so much. So although we were on the 3-weekly cycle, we're on track. We've got the same resources in with the same kit and equipment. It's just that sometimes we have spikes in the season where it is a bit kind of relentless.
I fully accept that. That just seemed worse this year, and I did go to Belton today, and there are some areas sort of turning to hay in parts of Belton, which is quite bad. But that is great work what you've all been doing. Mark and his team really appreciate what you do, and that's a massive change since I've been a councillor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Chairman. I also like to congratulate the the departments on all the work they've been doing over the last few months. It certainly made a lot of difference to the town. I would just like them to just, under section 1.5, hotspot campaign, could you perhaps enlighten me as to what the monitoring of specific alleyways entails, please?
Chris?
Yeah, that is the hotspot and fly tip review. That is a project that GYBS and GYBC are doing in partnership, and we're currently working through 2 of the alleyways down Churchill Road where we've been doing some monitoring of the fly tipping and the sideways down there. Residents have been given a pack with their address and house number to for a sticker to put on each of their bins, so then we can monitor if bins have been left out and rogue bins have been left about. So we've got the rangers and that's been supported as well by the IT squad down there. That started on the 2nd of June, so that we're going to be monitoring that area for a month. We're going to cover that in my presentation actually, but this is kind of a joint campaign where we're monitoring what's going on, also taking into account that there's going to be bulky collection, so we've got a sticker for that as well to notify the crew. But any fly tip, we've got another sticker to put on that, and there's a date put on that, so then we're leaving it for 48 hours, and then we're doing some social media to promote that that's been left out, to try and encourage residents to come forward and report them people, so we can try to make a difference to reduce that waste being left out in the alleyways. And once we've completed that, then we're going to look at the lessons learned and then move on to another area.
Thank you very much. That's most informative.
Just to quickly build on that response, I believe there's also going to be a report from the Head of Environmental Services on this particular campaign at our next meeting. So that will hopefully be able to put some more flesh to the bones on that, so to speak. Councillor Fairhead?
Yeah, just on the mowing situation, we have just been through no mow on for May, but I know everybody thinks that's a bit of a joke, but I know I brought it up before that there are some areas within the borough that could be left, and some residents in my ward had expressed they would like one area left, which then encourages the bees and things to go, and whether that's something that could be looked at. And because I just think we have to think about the bees a lot. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, we can certainly look at that, Councillor Fairhead. We do try to sort of identify areas where we can leave, but we have to balance that with our service level agreement and the partnership. So it'd be it'd have to be a decision from the council if they wanted us to reduce or identify some areas so it's captured, and certainly we'd bring that back to this committee. So.
Thank you. On that point, I would have thought it would be inevitably part of the agreed biodiversity item we've asked to put on the forward plan, because that, as you say, it's an obvious, there's an obvious linkage and symmetry on that side of things. Councillor Waters-Bunn.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say well done, Chris. I think the dramatic improvement has been amazing. But I would like to try and support Chris a bit more through the council's social media. The fantastic work the HIC squad does is grand. Now, individual councillors, I know Donna has posted on her own page the amazing job that HIT squad has done. It shouldn't be up to individual councillors to post stuff on their Facebook pages when the work is actually being done as part of the council. So, why is Great Yarmouth Borough Council's website page, social media platforms not picking up on the great work that's going on with our partners throughout this borough? It is a really important thing, we need to support these guys doing the job. They're doing a grand job, but we'll just forget about that. I think it's a little bit rude. And I would like to see more positivity on our social media platform about the jobs that we are doing?
I think Chris wants to respond to that, but I would just like to say I agree that we have a positive story to sell and we should be putting that out as much as possible.
And can we please get the e-scooter photo of the person on the pavement on it off our social media platforms? Just to say, thank you. Can that be minuted?
Chris?
Just very quickly, totally agree with social media, and I thank members for support. We do give the messages back to the communications at the council, and we do promote what they do. Take that on board, and maybe we should be doing a bit more, but you know, they are very, very well received, and yesterday morning they were interviewed by Radio Norfolk, so they are getting quite a bit of airtime, and they are very well received across the borough. So
thank you, Chris. Councillor Bensley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just like to echo the statements from my other colleagues regarding the work and the improvement around the borough. But I would just like to highlight we've had a good, what should I say, test period for these new capacity bins that have gone along Yarmouth seafront in the leisure industry and tourism industry. And also we've had extra capacity on Hemsbury Beach Road. I travel down Hemsbury Beach Road nearly every day at about 7 in the morning, and that place is very, very messy until these, what should I say, angels turn up, and or the dustbin angels turn up and clean the road magnificently. And I should imagine it's the same along Yarmouth seafront as well. They deserve great credit, and they're very hard working, but the extra bins and the capacity that they've put in place, and hopefully that ideas will evolve as well, cannot be underestimated. And also our regular bin crews on the wagons, etc. I would hate to think how much extra waste we've had over this past week due to a real heavy influx of tourism, which is fantastic, but all our crews and everybody have stood up to the task, and that's been amazing to see. So thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Just on the tonnage, so the first bank holiday weekend, Mark's now recording all of the waste movements and the people movements, and that weekend we lifted 14.4 tonnes. It's quite a significant number.
Councillor Hammond.
Thank you. Yes, just agreeing with everybody else. I mean, I am very, very supportive of the borough services. And on top of what they do, which we all know, I also want to mention how when I do get in touch for different areas or reasons or help, how quickly and efficiently what I ask for is actually done. Thank you.
Chris, do you want to say anything? Or?
Thank you, Councillor Hammond. We do try to respond, and we do try to be proactive and reactive wherever we can. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Watersburn, I'll be really nice.
I'm really sorry. I forgot to mention about weed killing and spraying. I've noticed a personal issue to me. My father's been in Goulston Cemetery now for 21 and a half years, and this is the first year that weed killer has been sprayed around the edges as opposed to edging taking place around the edging of the grave plots. I will obviously send photos through to you, Chris. But, you know, I did have a lovely bush that's been there for 10 years, which has now been well and truly killed by the amount of weed killer that's been sprayed around. And it's a little bit... I'm not that sentimental. You know, it's been there 21 and a half years, so a bush 10 years ago don't really mean much to me. But if that was planted on somebody's grave as a memory of what would have been a big birthday or a significant wedding anniversary, and the guys have gone round and just sprayed all the edges of the grass and killed anything within it, is not really looking after our pasts very well. It's never happened before in 21 and a half years.
Chris?
Thank you for that, and we will look into that. I think that were raised earlier on as well, so I'll find out why that has changed, and that will come part of that review of using pesticides and weed killer and stuff like that. But there should be. Yes, if you could do, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, if there are no other questions or comments, do we need to have a proposer just to note the report, or can we just? So, I think we can just say thank you, Chris, again, and thank you to all your team and all of your colleagues for all of your hard work. And as I said, we look forward to seeing ever growing improvements. So fantastic. Thank you so much. I don't know why I keep on turning my microphone off. It's just habit. Right. Thank you. So item 8 on page 30 is the resources and waste strategy consultation. Again, this is over to Paula if you've got anything you wish to add to the report.
Thank you, Chair. So members have in front of you a paper from the Head of Environmental Services that sets out 3 relatively complex consultation papers, all linked to the Environment Bill, going through Parliament at the moment. Extended producer responsibility for packaging, which producer responsibility already exists, so that people who put packaging material into the supply chain pay a levy, usually to a collection organisation, to have it recovered and reprocessed. And the government is consulting on extending that producer responsibility to a wider range of materials, and including on-the-go or all-in packaging. So depending on whether it's wholesale or larger scale, or indeed smaller on-the-go, i.e. cartons that you take out on your picnic. My colleague James has summarised our proposals that we're looking for support from committee to register with the government on this, and also as part of the Norfolk Waste Partnership response to government, which this Borough Council is a member of. The second consultation paper is Deposit Return Scheme, and as the name suggests, it's looking at placing an amount of money, 20 pence, on packaging that would then fund the return and either refill or remanufacture of that packaging. Scotland, as a devolved authority, already has a deposit return scheme, so government is now looking at seeing if there is merit and how it could be constituted within England. And the final part of this paper is the catchy title of Consistency in Household and Business Recycling, whereby the government are consulting to bring a level of consistency across all of household recycling schemes across the UK, which would mean that there'd be a set amount of different types of materials that would be collected at the doorstep. And the government is actually consulting on, rather than continuing to, as we do currently, to commingle and collect and then take it off for sorting, to have it separated at the doorstep, which some district councils do. Norfolk doesn't choose to do it that way at the moment. We take our material to a MRF, material recovery facility, where it is separated and sent off in its constituent materials. So this is about bringing some consistency to it. As you'll have read in the paper, the proposal would be that we generally support these recommendations and proposals. However, they all come with financial costs on them, and particularly the consistency consultation paper that you will have seen in the financial implications has a hefty potentially financial penalty if the government doesn't fully fund this. Because they're also suggesting that councils introduce a weekly separate food waste collection, which this council doesn't do. Other councils, Norwich and Broadland, do in Norfolk, but we have not got that costed into our base budget at the moment. And under that consistency consultation, the government's also suggesting that councils provide a free garden waste collection service. Now, as you know, all of the districts in Norfolk charge. It's a subscription base, so therefore not only would there be £1 million additional cost to do some of these changes, but we would lose approximately £500,000 in income as well. So it's going to be a difficult one to square the circle. We just heard from Mr. Minns about, and the paper previously, about the need to look at net zero and our carbon reduction. And that needs to be taken into account in these, in any changes to the way we collect our waste. And clearly, I would be recommending to the committee that we submit the comments to the Waste Partnership and also directly to government through this consultation, and ensure that we have a commitment to do the right thing, but actually it needs the correct funding. Thank you.
Right. Any questions or comments from members? I don't think so. So the recommendations are: the committee notes the details of the consultations and officer comments. Members are asked to note there's an officer working group to look at the implications and prepare the council for these proposed changes is being set back and will feed back to the committee. Again, we don't require a proposer and seconder for that. So if the members are happy, are we happy to approve those recommendations? Fantastic, thank you. So that then means we are moving on to item 9, which is any other business. I have one item of any other business which is being brought up by both Councillor Carpenter and Councillor Wright, which relates to the campaign to try and remove the frisbees from sale within Yarmouth, as I'm sure the committee are aware that these environmentally damaging frisbees can end up in the sea, and there's some truly unpleasant, to put it mildly, images of what they will do to seals if it goes round their neck. Councillor Carpenter kindly provided me with some correspondence from one of the main organiser of the, I think it's the Save Horsey Seals organisation, where it was listing some of the companies and local firms who have already, in response to their campaign, have agreed to take and remove these items from sale, with a request asking that, as on behalf of the committee, I would write to them to thank them for undertaking this act. And in addition, Councillor Wright raised and provided some correspondence that a number of local firms and a number of additional firms have raised issues in regard. I've said that they would be interested to do it, but they require senior management to undertake to kind of also a head office approval to do so. And so we've been requested whether we would write to those head offices to ask whether they would consider removing it. Are the committee happy to do so on that? I think there's broad agreement on that. I have, so if we can get a minute that we will, I've been given the correspondence so I can get the letters over so we can get those drafted and out before the next meeting. It has just occurred to me, and it has just been pointed out to me, that Chris had prepared a specific presentation as part of item 8, which, to be honest, I think, not a part of item 8, sorry, as part of 7, which, to be honest, I think I, in my enthusiasm to compliment you, glossed completely over, Chris. So, would you like to give the presentation? It has been sent out directly. Would you?
Conscious of time, Chair, if you'd like me to come back to the next meeting and give an update, more than happy to continue now, but I'm just conscious of time.
I think I'm quite happy to the committee's view. Would you like to have it? I do apologise, it is entirely my fault. I was so enthusiastic to start praising, and having read the report, I had missed the cheerful collection of slides next to me. So, committee, are you happy to do it? I'm quite happy to do it now. It's purely down to the committee's view on that. Yeah, I don't hear anyone disagreeing with us doing it now, so Chris, you don't get an early night.
Right.
And I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, again. So this was just a few slides really to sort of look back and reflect over the last 15 months with some lessons learned at GYB Services. So there's the list of content, so a bit of a look back, talk about the pandemic, the IT squad, progress, looking forward, the new normal, projects, challenges, and then open to questions. So looking back, this committee will recall that the street improvement plan was issued last February, and for overflowing bins, there were complaints, the poor standards, supervision, which obviously had a reputational impact on the borough. So in starting to deal with that, then the pandemic came crashing in, and we obviously had to respond and react to that as well. And there's lockdown 1, which required a lot of changes and a lot of issues and restrictions that we had to work within. But nonetheless, the team picked that up and worked through that. And then there's the opening up. And then we no sooner opened up, we were kind of locking down again. So there were, you know, things were kind of up and down, but nonetheless, the teams continued to adapt and to provide the services. We continue to sort of tweak the plans and adjust the plans to from the new demand that we're seeing with the footfall in the borough during the pandemic. And then whilst all that were going off, we went into Christmas and we did all the Christmas catch-up, which was great and went nice and smooth. And then we were with the bad weather, where we had a week suspension of the refuse service. And again, we kind of worked through that without too much fuss and got that one sorted out. And then the team then got the borough prepared for the opening and the easing of lockdown, which was has been picked up through previous comments, has been well received and noted. So progress. We obviously there's the service improvement plan. We're now responding to the actions as business as usual, really. Everybody's obviously seeing the improvements and the better standards as a result of this plan. Assisted collections, so we started rolling that out. Phase 1 had a 168 reduction in applications. Phase 2 was 148. Phase 3 applications have just come in, and Phase 4 has started going out this week, which then completes the review right across the borough, and we're hoping for a 50% reduction on that list. So then I came into post while all this lot were going off. We went through into a restructure. It became quite clear to me that changes were needed, and we needed to have a team in place who had more capacity to help work on some of these projects that we wanted to do, to make some improvements, and have an achievable workload. And coming with us tonight, there's a lot of you may know Mark Whiten, who's the new street scene manager, and sat alongside Mark is Jim Holder, our new waste collection manager. Both started in them new roles on the 3rd of May, and they're just sort of finding their feet in them new roles, and we're looking now to sort of make even more improvements. So again, under the progress, we've got the new bin housings, which are about to be ordered with the lockdown frames, and just on the central promenade there, we are calculating that the capacity will be increased from 1,800 litres to 7,200 litres, just with that review and that piece of work. Communications. Are much better now with GYB services and GYBC and also the County Council as well. We're having regular meetings to talk about various issues and getting things sorted out. And we've brought in some new equipment. Where are we going now? Where are we? Has that moved on? No, there we go. So yeah, we brought in the electric sweeper, which has been used across the borough. We're using electric mowers now. The side loader to help service the seafront, that should be delivered any time. And we've also just approved the purchase of a new mechanical sweeper, which has just been registered in our name, and we're now waiting for a delivery date. The hotspot and the fly tip review I touched on earlier from Councillor Bird's question. This is the team who actually empty the bins down in them streets, and we thought that we want to put that crew to personalise it on our marketing, because it's these guys who have to sort of deal with this on a day-to-day basis. So we just try to personalise it a bit. And obviously we've got the IT squad, which is getting a lot of air cover, and which is great. We've now supplied them with a new van, and we've got it branded. The guys have got their PPE branded, and as it's already been spoke about, they're doing a great job. They've been on the radio yesterday, but it's their work ethic and the standards, and now that's starting to spread now across the service. So they are setting the benchmark very high under Mark's watch. Mark's the guy who put that team together with Isaac. So it's a team effort. So looking forward, we're doing stuff with the new team on performance management. So we've got staff appraisals, which we've rolled out. We've got the KPIs, and we've also now got an environmental management system, which we're now working on. We're going to continue with the consistent good standards. New ways of working, weekend working, late afternoons and evenings, as we react to the new ways, really, and the influx of people coming into the borough. Planning for growth, so new developments built into the waste collection routes, which we're going to be starting. And we've also introduced employee stroke team of the month, which started in April, and that is recognition for a member of staff or a team who have gone over and above. And that is usually sort of judged from the compliments what come in. We're doing some stuff on well-being as well. Obviously, the guys and the team have worked through the pandemic. It's just been business as usual. Everybody's wanting the bins emptied, and everybody's wanting the litter picked up. So, we're doing some stuff behind the scenes there. We're getting some of the staff trained up as for mental health first aiders in the workplace as well. And finally, on that slide there, new technology. So we're monitoring progress on electric vehicles in the industry, and we're starting to use technology in recording and monitoring services. So the new normal. We've still got COVID here, unfortunately. We had an HSE phone call 2 weeks ago who called us and went through a set of questions about COVID compliance, and members will be pleased to hear that we passed with flying colours, which is great stuff. So the new normal, again, high footfall. Everybody knows the change that with the staycation and everything else. We continue to adapt and change things to meet the new standards. We're revising shift patterns for weekend cover, balancing the waste collection rounds, and that project is about to start. And extra tonnages, which I touched on earlier on about that bank holiday, 14.4 tons. So what's next? So there's four projects there, which it doesn't sort of sell itself because there's a significant amount of work there. So that's what we're going to be working through as a team in partnership with GYB and GYBC. A lot of things to be working through, exciting times, and we're getting through the other end and having good standards across the borough. So very challenging over the last 15 months, but this committee has helped us with the actions which were set for the improvements to keep the borough looking good and clean. So I hope members found that useful and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to make one very quick, it's not really a question, it's more a comment, just to say how incredibly welcome the round review is. That's been incredibly needed for a very long time, and I'm sure that will drive out quite a lot of efficiencies as well for the service, which is hugely beneficial. Councillor Carpenter, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Chris, obviously, I think you may not have, mentioned it in your introduction, but obviously the teams on the ground are now fully involved, and they have also come up with ideas themselves, and I think that's a positive turnaround within Churchill Road, and I have to say that it's most welcome that they're the guys doing it, and that I know they have come up with some really good suggestions. So, it's an all-inclusive, so which is far better than where we were. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah. So the team, the frontline staff are involved with the hotspot review. They're going to be involved with the round review. So then waste collection staff will have final sign-off on them new routes. And them are the guys who do the sort of fine-tuning. No software system can beat a bin man. I can guarantee that. They will get that final 5%. But they will be across other projects as well. When the waste consultation starts, that's going to be a massive piece of work, as is the climate change and everything else. But rest assured, the frontline staff will be involved.
I'm very pleased to hear that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? If not, I would just like to thank you again for all of the work you do and apologise profusely about forgetting the work you had done on that fantastic presentation. Thank you. And so, continuing on with the rest of the agenda, item 10 is exclusion of the public, but of course we only need to do that if anyone wishes to speak on the confidential meetings in item 11. So, does anyone wish to speak on the confidential minutes? I'm not seeing any hands, so I think we just need to have a proposer to accept those as a true and accurate record. Councillor Carpenter and seconder? Councillor Anderson. So if we're all happy with that, if we could show approval, please. Thank you. And then with that, that's the agenda over. So I now close the meeting and thank you all for coming. We would ask members to stand. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wright.
I should have said before, is there any chance that we can invite Jennifer Obson? We did say, didn't we? She'd just like to come and say thank you for the support we've given her.
Yeah. I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. Yeah, can we just get that on minuted on that? I spoke. If we get it included as part of the AOB, because that does all tie in. So I've got no objection to that at all.
If she could come to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, Tina.
Chairman, can I just ask members to stay seated until the live stream has ended?